Alright parents, I'm going to do a quick little video just to kind of show you some of the multiplication strategies we've been doing in class recently. I know that there's some confusion on area model. It's a new standard that came with Common Core. Today's students actually learned the first time 2 times 2 digits and they were really excited. But I just kind of want to give you an idea of what we're learning so that when problems come home, you know what is expected of them and also how to help a little bit. So when we first started our multiplication strategies, we started with 4-digit numbers times 1-digit number, something like that. And the way they were told in class to set this up is since there are 4 digits here, we need 4 boxes. And since there's only 1 digit here, we only need 1 row of those 4 boxes. Might be better if I do this in pen. Let's see. And so then they're to take this number and expand it out in expanded form. And each digit gets its own box. So for example, 1,000 would be our first box. And then 200. And then 30. And then 5. And that is our expanded form notation for that number. Now, on this side, we put what we're multiplying by. And since there's only 1 digit, we only need 1. Inside the box, students are told to put their equation for what's going to be multiplied in that box. So, for example, 1,002 would be in this box. 202 would be in this box. And then 30 times 2 and 5 times 2. After we've written our equations, we can find our partial products. So 1,000 times 2 is 2,000. 200 times 2 is 400. 30 times 2 is 60. And 5 times 2 is 10. And the way students are told to find this is they're supposed to find their base fact. So 2 times 2 is 4. Add 2 zeros gives us 400. After we get all of our partial products, we line them up and add them up. So we write down our numbers that we found. We line up our digits very carefully. And we add them all together. And that gives us our final product and our answer. So that's kind of what we did last week and the week before that. That was basic 4 digits by 1 digit, the first kind of part of that standard. Now this week we've transitioned a little bit more and we've moved on to 2 digit by 2 digit. And today it was just 2 digits and one of those is a multiple of 10. So since there are 2 digits here, we need 2 boxes on top. And since there's 2 digits here, we need 2 boxes on the bottom. And we kind of called this, we named it a window, because it looks like a window to help us remember. And then do the same thing. We're going to take this number and we're going to expand it, 30 plus 5. And we're going to take this number and we're going to expand it, 20. And since there's nothing in the ones place, we just put a 0 for this one. After that, we do the same thing we did up here, and we write down our equations. So 30 times 20, 5 times 20, 30 times 0, and 5 times 0. After we've written our equations, we are ready to multiply. So 30 times 20 is 600. 5 times 20 is 100. 30 times 0 is 0, and 5 times 0 is 0. Some students you might see cross these out after they've discovered their 0, which is fine with me. It's just a way to remind ourselves that we need those boxes for 2 by 2, but they're not really going to affect our answer. After that, we just add them up like we did before. 600 plus 100 is 700. So our final product for this one should be 700. Things change a little bit when we have 2 digits by 2 digits that do not have a multiple of 10 in them. And that's when those extra boxes get really important. So I'm going to draw my window. I know I have 2 by 2. I need a 2 by 2 window. And I'm going to expand out my numbers and write my equations. 50 times 40. 50 times 2. 1 times 40. And 1 times 2. And then I find my partial products. 5 times 4 is 20. And then I have 2 zeros. That gives me 2,000. 50 times 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Add an extra 1 gives me, or an extra 0, it gives me 100. 1 times 40 is 40. And 1 times 2 is 2. Now we have to add these numbers all up, and the students have some choices. They can add them all up like we did up here, lining all 4 numbers up carefully and making sure that they really take their time to line up the digits, or they can add them up in columns and rows. Normally when we work them together, we add them up in columns. So 2,000 plus 40 would be 2,040, and 100 plus 2 would be 102. And now we need to add those up. And that gave us our final product. Okay? The reason the equations are so important is there's 2 reasons. One, it helps students make sure that they're multiplying the correct things in the correct box. So instead of accidentally messing up and multiplying 50 times 1 in this box or 40 times 2 over here, we just write our equations to keep us organized. But it also is really important when we start looking at distributive property. For example, if we were to write all of these equations down, so there's our first equation plus our second equation plus our third equation plus our last equation. This is our distributive equation for that problem. And they might see this a couple ways. They might see it as 42 times 50 plus 42 times 1. It can see it distributive a different way, but as long as they have the basic idea of how to get this equation from their equations in their boxes, they should be fine. This is an advanced skill. We mostly need to focus on this one, and first off, being able to find the equations and solve for the product. We will also be having an area model style for division, which they will be learning here in a couple of weeks after our endpoint. I'm not going to model that for you now. I'll model that once we get to that chapter, but if you have any questions ever on how to solve it in area model, how to find an answer, feel free to dojo me. Feel free to send a note with your child or check out videos, whatever you need to do. I'm pretty open. I know that this is new. It was new for me when I started teaching as well. I had never learned it this way. One last thing, another way they could see these problems is with a missing box. So for example, and we've done a few of these, I'll show a 4x4 because we have done those. So with area model, there's a possibility, and I kind of have to think about an example for a second. So there's a possibility that they could have a problem that has missing numbers in it. So we could have, let's see. Something like that, where some of the products are missing, but then also some of the factors are missing, the numbers that we multiply by. And they have to know how to work it backwards. For example, here they'd have to see what times 5 gives me 45,000. And hopefully they would notice that it would be 9,000, and then they could check. 9,000 times 5, well, 9 times 5 is 45. Do I have the right number of zeros? I do. So that must be correct. And then they go and they find the product here, and they find the product here, and they have to find it backwards here. What times 5 is going to give me 10? And that number would be 2. So these type of questions we will see more of as we gain more mastery in the standard, but they could also see them in this type of problem and that, where they're missing pieces. All right, well, I hope that helped a little bit. If you have any more questions, please let me know.